Welcome to the Fertility Hive podcast, where we dive deep into the emotional highs and lows of the fertility space. I'm your host, Lisa Chia, parent via egg donation and surrogacy, founder of the Genesis Group and co-founder of Seeds. I'm joined by our incredible co-host, our resident mental health professional, Abigail Glass, who has been supporting individuals in the fertility space for over 2 decades and is a parent via adoption, and also our esteemed attorney, Molly O'Brien, a partner at the International Fertility Law Group and a sitting board member of Seeds. Together, we bring over 60 years of combined experience. We are here to provide you with clear information, a unique perspective, expert guidance, and a whole lot of heart as you navigate your journey. Whether you're considering surrogacy, exploring sperm or egg donation, or simply trying to understand the complexity of building your family, we've got you covered. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Barb Collura, a nationally recognized leader in the infertility advocacy space. She's a trusted voice in reproductive health. As a former president and CEO of Resolve, the National Infertility Association, Barb led the organization for nearly 2 decades, expanding its reach, influence, and national impact. She secured bipartisan legislative victories that improved access to fertility care and helped elevate infertility as a critical public health issue. Her work has shaped policy, amplified patient voices, and advanced more equitable access to reproductive health services across the United States.
Hello, everybody. Barb, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you here. And I'm going to jump in by asking you to share how you landed in this spot. How'd you land here in your life, and what's a bit of your story so that our listeners can know the brilliance of who you are and everything you've done?
Absolutely. Brilliance.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so grateful that you wanted to talk to me during National Infertility Awareness Week as we think about policy and advocacy in our space. And so I love that you asked me. So my husband and I went through our own infertility journey, and I live in the Washington, D.C. metro area. And we did IVF, and it didn't work. I won't go into all the reasons why it didn't work and what was going on. But I landed in kind of a really dark place emotionally. And I had sort of an intervention, really, by a couple of friends who said, you need to get help. You need to get serious professional help. And I found a mental health provider through an online board. And she specialized in infertility. She's still doing it, and it was amazing. And I saw her every week. And she encouraged me to seek out Resolve and the resources that Resolve had here in the Washington, D.C. area. And just for background, this was in the late 1990s. And so I did that. And I became a consumer of Resolve's programs and services and resources. And through that connection to Resolve, through my mental health provider who I saw every week, my husband and I made the decision to build our family through adoption. My son was born in 2000, and so he's 25 years old, and he was born in Guatemala. And so, but when it's interesting, Abby, because when I think about my story, it's really less about the medical treatment and less about the adoption process, and it's more about the mental health kind of crisis that I found myself in, and how, first of all, connecting with a mental health provider who knew what she was doing. I know you love hearing that, but connecting with the community, like feeling not alone. So I got myself into a better place emotionally, mentally, and I started volunteering for Resolve in the DC area. I ended up volunteering for 4 years. And in 2004, the organization moved their national headquarters from outside Boston to the Washington, D.C. metro area. I joined the staff. I managed our volunteers. And then in 2007, the board asked me to serve as the president and CEO, which I did for 18 years. So that was up until really the summer of 2025. And I, as a patient advocate, which I loved, and you can tell I was a patient myself, I saw a lot of gaps. I saw a lot of areas where I felt like more people needed to be at the table. And so I'm now consulting and helping both organizations and companies lean into advocacy and
Mm-hmm.
policy, and how do we bring more voices to the table, because there's a lot we need to solve. And so I know we're going to get into that, but that's kind of who I am and how I got where I am.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
Thank you. I mean, I always believe that the best problem solvers are those who've experienced the problem and know the nuances and everything. And it shows. I mean, you are really, when you think about advocacy in our field, you're one of the first names that comes to mind. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's because your passion is so deeply rooted in your own story. So thank you for bringing that passion to our field. I think it's very much needed and still really needed. And when I think about our field right now, I'm unsettled. Like, our America is unsettled, and it looks like a scary place. And I don't know, like, I've had conversations with intended parents who've said, I so desperately want to have a child, but I don't know if I can bring a child into this world right now because there's so many things that are unsettled. I mean, looking at the landscape, what do you see are like our biggest threats to our field right now?
Well, I think you have to have, first and foremost, a realization and just clear-eyed that there are organizations, people, if you will, forces who don't like IVF, who don't like
Mm-hmm.
surrogacy, who don't like donor conception. And many of them are in powerful positions. They are well-funded. They may be a minority. If you poll all Americans, it doesn't matter. They're in positions of power with money, with influence. And, let's be honest, they worked tirelessly for 50 years to overturn Roe v. Wade. And they're many of the same forces, however you feel about that particular case. My point there is that these voices are not going away. They're getting smarter, and I think they're getting savvy, and I don't want to say sneaky, but they are a force to be reckoned with in that they're doing things well and they're doing things right, but I don't agree with what they're doing, right? But I want
Mm-hmm.
to make it clear that this isn't, a fly-by-night podcaster or a blogger who's just kind of off on their own. These are very well-established national organizations with very, very deep pockets. And so we have to be very clear-eyed about what we are doing, how we are showing up,
Mm-hmm.
and quite honestly, be a lot more proactive. And I hope we get a chance to talk a little bit about that because I don't know about you, but I lived through Alabama. I don't wish that on anybody, to be in an environment where you're just waiting for a shoe to drop. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like kind of the next chapter for our field is, how do we move into proactive advocacy and how do we protect ourselves? And so those are the kinds of things that I see. But we uh, there's a lot of folks who love to put their head in the sand. And there's a lot of folks who love to do this and think, "God, somebody else is going to fix this. Look around. It's us
Right.
and it's you." And so I think those are the things that I'm thinking about and where we are right now.
I've got two things to say because
Mm-hmm.
you're 100% right, in my opinion. It's time for us to start speaking up and speaking loud. I see the problem primarily that the people who have the strongest voice in this are the people affected by it. And just as you were saying, one of the things that made you such a strong advocate is the fact that you went through these things. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people who aren't comfortable speaking up about it. And that's such a difficult hurdle to get over. And I'd love it if we can talk about that for a second, because we need to take the shame out of this and talk about it openly and normally so that people feel comfortable
Molly,
advocating.
years ago, I don't remember the exact year, but it was in the early years of me at Resolve, so 2005, 2006. I remember having this conversation with an advocate, and I said to her, I said, "It's okay if you don't want to tell your story. Resolve is here. We got you. We got your back. And you don't need to tell your story. That's not my message today. My message today is we need every story. We need every story at the table. And advocacy, I like to say with a capital A, is scary to a lot of people. And so we need to really start normalizing this, and we really need to lean in much more to the need for everyone, whether you're an agency owner, whether you're a mental health provider, whether you're an intended parent, whether you're a surrogate, you're at the table and you're telling your story. You're not speaking for somebody else. So that's just the fear I have, is exactly what you said, that a lot of people are like, I'm too overwhelmed. I'm too scared. We've got to figure out a way to inspire people so that they are comfortable telling their story. I don't want to keep going on and on, but some of us remember things like breast cancer advocacy, AIDS, HIV, AIDS, mental health advocacy. Do you think we'd be anywhere with those things if all of those people had stayed home and stayed quiet?
The
No.
people that are talking right now are the people who, the 1% who have the bad experience. That's what's in the media.
100%.
That's whose vote is there, not vote, but voice, whose voice is out there. And that's the worst part, is the stories you hear that are being reported are the sensationalized ones.
Yeah.
I would love if we had like a movement where we empowered people to speak. Maybe if it's like a stand up and speak your voice day or whatever it is, but share your story. Because I think as an intended parent myself who's gone through this process, I've been fortunate enough to have the support of this community. And even then I've had times where I'm like, I'm not comfortable 100% sharing what I've experienced and what I've done, because anytime you put yourself out there, you're subject to criticism and opinions that you're like, I don't have time for that. You know, we're so much in a space of let's cut out the drama so you can live a happy life. And so why invite that in is kind of my perspective, you know? And when I hear you say that, you're absolutely right, because the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, they're only highlighting the problems. It's like,
Of course,
going to Yelp and looking for the 1-star reviews, because that's all you're getting is like the complainers, the people who had bad experience. The beauty of surrogacy, like having complete strangers do this incredible act for the sake of a child to build a family, is incredible. And I know that joy. I know the beauty of surrogacy. And yet I'm still confounded when I'm like, oh, do I want to talk about this online? You know, I don't want to. I'm not sure if I want to do it. So to advocate and say you should all do it is a scary position, I think, even for me. And I've been in this field for 20 plus years. So I can't imagine an intended parent who's just experiencing this, not knowing, you know, if this process is going to work out for them, and having this financial burden, and asking them to stand up and speak and say and tell your story so everyone can normalize this conversation. You know, I think it's a scary proposition. So how do we do that? Like, do you recommend like a stand up and speak day, or, you know, I don't know.
I just want to jump in and say that, Lisa, you're naming that I think when intended parents especially are still in it, it's taking all of us or all of them, right, to just get to their family. And so they don't have it in them right now in it to speak their story. One, because they don't have their whole story. And two, because of the rockiness of the culture of this world right now. But the people who do have their story, they need to get encouraged.
I mean, I think it really starts with, you know, all the organizations that are part of this. I know many already are, you know, we did it at Resolve. Well, the whole time I was there, encouraging people to tell their stories, but it's really even more, Lisa. We need even more of that. You know, I got asked a question. I have to say, I don't think anyone had ever asked me this question. And I'm going to tell you what it was. You're going to be like, that's wild that no one's ever asked you that. But earlier this week, this advocate said to me, what keeps you going? What keeps you doing what you're doing? Can you believe no one's ever asked me that?
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm not making this up just because you guys put it out there. I said to her, in real life, I have seen the power of somebody telling their story and how that made a difference with a lawmaker, with the media, uh, in my own eyes. Like somebody I felt like was against us or over here, and that story brought them over here. And that's our community. This happens in every facet of life, right? The lawmaker who hears the one story about somebody who cared for their parent with Alzheimer's and changes all these but I've seen it with my own eyes. And so what fuels me about that is that I just need it's like I need to see that happen more. And it's not like we need millions of people, but we need a lot more voices and a lot more people who are willing. And Abby, you're absolutely right when it's right for you. But if you're going to sit it out, then that tells me you're okay with the status quo. I'm not. Are you?
No, when you frame it like that, then you kind of inspired to be like, yes, I need to be brave, because like you frame it, you're either probably part of the problem or the solution, and you can't be. There's no Switzerland in this equation. I think we just need to make it really easy to be able to share your story in a safe space, so that there would be a way to amplify that voice. If I were to say, what, maybe we come up with like something like, a day where we share our beautiful stories, the beauty of surrogacy or the beauty of egg donation, the beauty of sperm donation. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud because like, I think I need to be prompted to be brave is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yep. I
I'm
couldn't agree more.
do we add something to this podcast? Is there a page somewhere for story sharing? Just to be a start or one place.
There are already some, I know Resolve has a share your story, but some others folks have that capability. But there's also the opportunity when you think about your circle, whoever's listening to this, who are your friends, who are your family, who's your neighbors, who do you interact with at work? Maybe you're involved with other activities in your life. Do they know your story? Do they know what you've been through? Is this part of your identity? And how do you show up in the world in the places where you have a lot of influence? And that's a fantastic place to start that. And it may not feel as comfortable. It might be actually easier to talk to a stranger than it is to your own, like, my aunt and uncle or this or that. That's what we're talking about. Advocacy starts with that. Again, think about other health conditions or other things that move us as a society. It's because you knew someone, right? And guess what? These stories that you and I are starting to tell are going to land with someone who becomes a state lawmaker, who lands with somebody who becomes a U.S. senator. And then they can say, I know someone who did that. So this is, we don't need to overcomplicate it, but if we're going to continue to point fingers and put our head in the sand, we're not going to, I'm sorry, we're going to be here 5 years from now having the same conversation.
Well, we'll probably be in a far worse position where more rights are being stripped away. I'm sure you know what's going on in Florida right now. I'm at the American Bar Association conference here, and a very scary bill. I'm not sure if I've shared it with you guys. You probably all know. Like this,
I read it.
It's a really terrible bill. It's specifically calling out people of certain cultures, which is horribly offensive. But it's targeting people doing surrogacy in a place that was a wonderful place to do surrogacy before that, and now it's completely untenable. And it's July 1st. It's happening. It's happening now. So 5 years, we're not going to be in the same place. We're going to be in a worse place.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And you couldn't have said it better.
One of my questions we are here with all of the painful, difficult realities of what's happening here. And we do need to keep exploring this and find out what action we can take, what we can actually do. One of my questions, though, is where do you have hope? Like, where's a place where you see hope so that these intended parents and people coming into this world can have a little hope? And there was some in your example of watching with your own eyes someone get shifted by a shared story.
There you go. That's where I have hope. I have hope that that people in positions of authority, even if we're like, oh, they're never gonna change their mind, we can't move that person. I've seen it with my own eyes, okay? And I can't guarantee it's gonna happen every time, Abby. Please don't hold me to that. But we have to try. This advocate I was talking to earlier in the week, she's in a state where her federal lawmakers, she's uncomfortable with their position on some of these things, and I'm encouraging her to start a conversation. And she's like, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And I'm like, well, we have to try. We have to start somewhere, and over time they can change. Lawmakers can change. They might have a staffer who's very sensitive to these issues, and they play a role in helping. So where I have hope is that we know what to do. We know how to do it, okay? And we need to execute at a much higher level. And some of that is as simple as getting people to tell their story and people to have these conversations. I saw an Instagram post the other day. We're doing this podcast in April of 2026, and it was about showing up in South Carolina because there's a bad bill in South Carolina. I feel like every other week there's a bad bill in South Carolina. And this was specific to IVF. And I would love to see us having state advocacy days in all 50 states every year. Okay, I'm from the state of Minnesota. I don't live there anymore, but I'm from the state of Minnesota. And I remember when I started advocating in the state legislature because there was some anti-surrogacy bills. This was going back 10, 12, 15 years in Minnesota. And I learned that the Minnesota Catholic Conference has not one, but 2 advocacy days every legislative session.
Wow.
Rain, snow, cold, whatever. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if there's issues, that they show up every year. Don't we have stories to tell? Don't we want to protect this? Don't we want to educate lawmakers? Abby, what if we've been doing that in Florida and Tallahassee for the last 5 years? Do you think these things would even go very far? I'm not saying you're never going to get something introduced that's bad, but you're going to get people squashing it, right? And we don't all have to run around hair on fire. So these are the kinds of things that are not happening in our space. So I have hope because we know what to do. We have the voices. We need to do a little better job of that execution.
So what I'm hearing is like we need to get better organized around this space, and that we need to be a little bit more braver in sharing our stories. I think there's so much like fear in this space as well because of judgment.
I recently worked on a bill in California that was about insurance. It was about insurance discrimination against pregnancy. And seeing people stand up, because the legislature lets you get up and tell stories. And if they ask for people to come show their support. That's a really easy way to just come up and say, I am in support. Actually, oddly enough, what they ask you to say is me too. But that's a whole nother, it's a kind of a weird thing to have to say in this day and age, but that's what they ask you to say in California. But I'm sure in Florida, when that bill was getting introduced, how powerful would it have been for a family to get up there and say, actually, maybe you should rethink this, and this is why. And they just, Barb, you're so right. They're getting sneaky about this. The way that this whole thing got introduced, there was an attorney from Florida who was telling us about this, and he said that the letter regarding, because there was a simultaneous lawsuit going on at the same time as this bill was introduced. And the lawsuit came from like the Department of Personhood or something like that, or some sort of something. And you're just like, oh, I see what they're doing now. That this was orchestrated to happen at the same time. And that's terrifying stuff.
Molly, I think I said a few minutes ago, they're doing things well. They're doing things right. They're well funded. No one is saying that they don't know what they're doing and they're not executing well. They are. And that should scare the you-know-what out of us.
It does. It does. So I'm starting to think we are all embedded in this world, but most people aren't. They come to it with the difficulty of wanting to have a baby, right? And then the world opens up. I don't think most people know how and what to do. So maybe one of the things we do, at least on here under this episode, is to have a how and what, like places to go, places to have your voice, so that we give people a doorway to actually take action in some ways.
I would also just say that the professional societies, the organizations where you show up as a professional, that you are ensuring that they are taking advocacy and policy seriously. And I get it. It's a big, scary thing, and a lot of people are not sure if they should get involved or not. And Abby, this is what's driving me today. And I'm not trying to give a sales pitch here, but I am in a way, because look, that's what I want to be doing, is taking people from, or organizations from, we're not doing anything, to being fully engaged. And there's so many different ways that that can happen. Oh my gosh. In all the years I've been doing advocacy, I would have loved nothing more than to have a robust advocacy of agencies, intended parents, surrogates, who no one can do it all, right? And so stay in your lane in terms of your area of expertise, but show up and be organized and do it well. And if people are listening to this going, I'm a part of some organizations, let me find out, and call me, because that's the kind of thing that I can talk to boards of directors, I can talk to leadership, and I can say,
Great.
This is how you get from here to here. But if you're choosing to not do anything, I'm sorry. I don't know that we have a choice right now.
Yeah, it's clear that we don't. Like when you look at our world, not just like for infertility, third party, but you're looking at just America in general, the world in general. It's a scary place, and it causes a lot of anxiety for me, to be honest. And I think what's happening is impacting us so much, and yet we don't have the luxury of just saying, okay, well, let the good guys handle it. There are no good guys handling it. There's nobody who's going to come in and save us from this trajectory. We have to take an active response, and people like me have to be brave and start to say, okay, what do I need to do within the realm of possibilities? What can I do to make an impact? Because then I frame it as problem and solution.
100%. Yeah, 100%. You asked Abby about what gives me hope, and I told you that there's this gap, and I know that we can fill that. If we were in a place where we were doing that well, we were well funded, and we were showing up, and these things were still happening, then I'd be really, really worried. But there's a lot that we can be doing, and that's the good news, right? That's the hopeful thing, not just for intended parents and those folks, but for all of us. If Molly, I wish I could say we've been doing everything right in Tallahassee for the last 15 years, and this never should have happened. That's not true, right? No offense to anybody in Florida who've been busting their butt, but I'm sure if I called up my friends in Florida, they'd all be like, oh my God, we've been on a shoestring. We've been, we had nonstop lobbyists and representation in Tallahassee for the last 15 years? No.
It's sad.
And sometimes
we can do it. We can fix this. We can fix
agree.
this.
There's the hope.
Being a connector is also a thing. If somebody comes to us and says, I've got a story, I'm not really comfortable getting up there alone and doing it, but I'll do it if I have somebody on either side of me, we can find people to stand next to them. Like being a connector works too.
So where do we go from here? Like what like if I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I'm an intended parent that's going through this process, and I'm, when I'm done with my family building, I'll want to connect. Are there any organizations that, like, yes, resolve, but are there any impact organizations? Like, here are the places that you can go to speak your stories, or, are there any resources like that out there right now?
No, that's not affiliated with a particular organization. No, but I know, Jewish Fertility Foundation wants stories. Resolve wants stories. But I would say to people listening that if you're an intended parent, start with the people that you worked with on this process, with your agency, with your lawyer, your mental health provider, and express to them that you're interested in sharing your story. Again, I think that they can help steer people. I know Resolve has a story collection tool, but Lisa, we're getting there with some of these other things. And then if you're a professional, I would start with your professional organizations. I like to kind of go up. Call me naive. I have a lot of faith and belief in organizations in being able to train and inspire and lift up their members to be amazing advocates. And if you're not getting that, then call me because that's really where we need to be. But Lisa, maybe this episode has identified some interesting gaps that somebody think somebody is going to feel like they need to fill.
I think so. I'm thinking like, why aren't these things readily available? Like, it's so easy to put like a landing page together and like just update, even if it's just social media, you can put it through, run it through Facebook where you're like, these are the things that should be happening. And it seems rather simple, but I understand it takes a lot of organization. And I'm hoping that, even people on this call will be inspired.
I feel like have already been super inspiring about the little steps that lead to the larger steps, and that the more of us doing it in all the different levels will make a difference. And I really kept hearing the way that you said where the challenges are, they're doing it well, and we need to do it well.
Pat yourself on the back. This podcast in and of itself is making a difference. Okay. So having these kinds of conversations, but you guys are very much call to action. I feel it. You're not sitting here talking about theory and isn't that nice? And somebody else showed up. You're like pounding this, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And that's exactly what I need to hear. That's exactly what us advocates need to hear, is that there's enough people saying that, and we're going to see, but it's going to take, it's going to take financial resources. It's going to take some plans, but again, you can already build on what's happening, but there's enough gaps there that there's enough room for all of us to get involved.
What do you wish you had known when you started on this journey as a parent trying to have a family and in advocacy? Like, what do you wish you knew?
Nobody's ever asked me that question. So here we go. 2 in 1 week, you guys. You guys are better than the Today Show. I think with advocacy, I guess I wish somebody had said it's not that hard. Like, this is not that hard. I think I just felt like this is going to be super hard for Resolve to be leading in this area, and it was scary, and sometimes we just jumped in with our eyes closed. But at the end of the day, quite honestly, it's not that hard. This isn't like I'm doing some medical procedure or writing a contract, legal contract. This is at its core, it's pretty basic human nature. So that's, I guess, what I would, and maybe that's why I come off as being like, why isn't everybody doing this? Because now I realize it wasn't that hard. Oh my God. Thank you for that, Abby.
Thank you for that answer.
And then, I think I'll leave it at that.
Well, I love that we've had the opportunity to talk to you. I hope that this sheds light on the process, that it's not hard, and that we just need to be brave, and we need to speak our stories. And if we don't have a story to speak yet, that's okay. But to understand that what's at stake, and
we're not alone.
Yes, that we are not alone. This process, I can't tell you how many times I've heard it. Intended parents will say, I've told nobody. You, as the agency, I'm speaking to you, but I'm not telling anybody.
No.
And that's such a heavy weight to carry. And I just wish that, we can come out of this taboo nature. I think we're getting there, especially with surrogacy. I feel like more people are talking about it. It's normalizing the conversation. I think egg donation and sperm donation is still like in the dark ages a little bit, but I think with surrogacy, it's coming. Like, and I think that's because people have started to speak up, especially celebrities and people in the media have started to share their stories and then inspiring stories on sitcoms. And, you know, and I think that's awesome. But I do think that we need to do more. Like we really need to do more. So I love that this conversation
Definitely
is
more.
happening.
So inspiring and so meaningful. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much.
I am so grateful to all of you for being here and can't wait to see what you all decide to do in advocacy. But this is really what I love, and I'm doing everything I can to get that gap really narrow.
Thank you for
Amazing.
that. I think
Thank you.
it's,
Thank you.
you know, we can see that it's a labor of love, and I think your impact in this field is evident. Like it really, we see how the needle is moving, and I know we have a long way to go, but I think that's hopeful.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Fertility Hive podcast. We hope today's episode was informative and educational and gave you the clarity and confidence you need to take your next steps on the path to parenthood. If you have questions, feedback, or topic you'd like us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on any of the social media channels linked here, or reach us directly at fertilityhivepodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to follow the podcast for more essential conversations, and see you next time.